DOGE and the new Department of Government Efficiency. I'm not talking about the Doge coin, but the actual official government organization headed by Elon Musk, who is trying to, reduce government waste and all this stuff. Well, Doge is firing on all cylinders, and I that word firing I use with pun intended, because they're going after a lot of these organizations and firing a lot of government employees, and ruffled a lot of feathers during the process, right? So the latest news, or the biggest news so far, is that they're going after this organization called USAID. I think it stands for the United States Agency for International Development, or some people call it USAID because that's what it spells. And the idea of USAID was just it's an organization that is supposed to be kind of furthering American interests overseas. It's a foreign aid organization, right? So they spend money in all these different countries all over the world to further American values. And this was something that was established by executive order by John F. Kennedy back in the 60s. But the reason why DOGE has been going after USAID is because it's been recently revealed, and this has been going on for a long time, but just revealed by DOGE's investigations, that USAID funded a lot of things that were, let's just say, questionable. So the idea of DOGE is to go after fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's kind of the starting point at which DOGE is trying to crack down upon that. And according to Elon, and according to Trump himself and people in the Trump administration, USAID is being described as a slush fund that is funding pro-Democrat policies and pro-Democrat programs. At least that's the opinion of the right, I guess you can say. But we can maybe have a debate on how accurate that classification is. But let me just kind of present you some of the facts, right? So first of all, this is a picture of Elon Musk with his son on his back, on his shoulders, in the Oval Office with Trump, giving a press conference. So during this press conference, one of the reporters asked him about Elon's claim that $50 million in condoms was sent to Gaza, which apparently turned out to be untrue. But hold on, like the media was like, okay, this is like a gotcha moment. Elon was lying. We got him. The truth was, it was not sent to Gaza, Palestine. It was sent to Mozambique, which has a province called Gaza. So that's where the confusion came from. So people are saying that the reporter was like, hey, you incorrectly stated that $50 million worth of condoms was sent to Gaza. It was not actually sent to Gaza. It was sent to Mozambique. And then Elon's like, well, like that doesn't make it that much better, right? I forget the exact words that he said, but I don't know. I just thought that was such a funny experience, funny kind of interaction. This is like, if your wife caught you cheating, and then your wife thought that you were cheating on her with her sister, and you're like, no, I didn't cheat on you with your sister. I actually cheated on you with your cousin. Like, okay, like that doesn't make it that much better, right? So it's like, hey, like this, we shouldn't be sending $50 million worth of condom to Mozambique either. Is Elon's kind of response to that, right? I think the exact words were, that's a lot of condoms. And like, we probably shouldn't send it. Probably shouldn't send that amount of condoms anywhere. I know this is kind of just one example. And Mario Nawfal, who's one of the journalists, one of the biggest journalists on X, he posted this kind of, just list of other things that DOGE has uncovered about USAID. So apart from the $50 million for condoms for Mozambique, there was $1.5 million spent on Kenyan soap opera to promote HIV/AIDS awareness and a whole slew of other social issues. $27 million spent for a Moroccan pottery class to teach, or a series of Moroccan pottery classes. I don't know if that makes it better if it's more than one pottery class, but to teach artists design skills and how to sell their work globally. $20 million spent on Pakistan's Sesame Street for a localized version of the show to promote education, cultural awareness among kids. So, you know, a lot of these things, you can say that they're nice things to do, but I would say that if you were to really present these ideas to the American taxpayer and told them that we're going to spend your tax money on this kind of stuff, I would imagine that the vast majority of American taxpayers would not be okay with this kind of spending, right? Because especially because America, it's not like America doesn't have problems domestically. There are a lot of problems domestically. Maybe, you know, it's probably the vast majority opinion that if you have extra money, if you have enough money to be sending overseas to pottery classes and stuff like that, maybe there's other places where the money could be better spent. Or maybe you just don't collect that money in the first place. Maybe give people a tax cut. So anyways, that's another example. And then another one that I kind of commented on, so I tweeted about this, and it's a post by the BBC, so the British Broadcasting Corporation, which is, you know, British, not American. So the BBC was getting a measurable amount of their income, which they said it amounted to about 8% of their income in 2023 to 24, which came from organizations like USAID. And basically, you know, we have to question why a foreign to the Americans, right? Because it's British, a foreign media corporation is getting funding from the US government. And we know that the BBC leans left. So it's like, you know, the whole argument that USAID is a pro-Democrat slush fund, I think this is kind of where it comes from. And this is what I said about it, right? So let me get this straight. The BBC is a free press, which is what they claimed in their statement, but a measurable amount of their income comes from a foreign government who wants nothing in exchange for their money, right? It's like totally zero influence on the types of stories after they contribute 8% of your income. So this is kind of what the US government is using to justify funding all these organizations through USAID. And I just think that, you know, this stuff is being uncovered, and a lot of people are probably not okay with this, although I can't speak for other people, and I'm not even American, but, you know, we'll have a talk about this later. So besides the USAID stuff, DOGE is gonna go after a lot of other agencies as well. So one of the biggest other agency, the Pentagon, is the next one that you know, DOGE is trying to go after. And then for DOGE, they've hired a lot of help from, you know, they have a whole team. And then part of their team is this 19-year-old guy who goes by the moniker Big Balls. And this is another like super funny thing where they're kind of forcing CNN to cover Big Balls when like you have all these like CNN anchors that are like super mad about this guy named Big Balls just going in and wrecking things and like firing staff and all that stuff. And I'm not gonna like play clips for copyright reasons, but you can look them up. Just like type in like Big Balls CNN on YouTube, and then you'll have like anchors just like repeating like in a really mad voice, like Big Balls is at it again. But anyways, I just thought it was kind of funny. And it's also kind of funny how they're going after this guy for being 19 years old to like make this connection that, oh, it's like a bunch of kids that are like running things that don't know what they're doing. But the Democrats are supposed to be the party of the youth, right? It's just not that youth if you're acting against democratic interests. But anyways, I thought I shared this post from David Sachs, who's the crypto and AI czar from the Trump administration. And he posted this really funny joke. Hey, sir, the Pentagon has failed another audit. And it was like, send in Big Balls. It's time. So anyways, that's all I had for Doge. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of opinions on how DOGE is doing and whether you like or dislike what DOGE is doing. What do you think about the whole USAID thing and what's been uncovered? Do you think that it's like a Democrat slush fund, or is that too heavy of an accusation? Because Democrats would say it's not just left-leaning causes, like they're doing a lot of charity as well, but is it really worth it? Is something that we have to question, right? Is it fraud, waste, and abuse, right? Should USAID be shut down, and should Elon Musk's DOGE be given this type of authority to like go in and try to fix things, or is DOGE going too far? So a lot of questions here, so I'm happy to hear what you guys think about this situation.
So my opinions on the whole Doge situation are completely hilarious. It seems like Elon's with common sense cracking down on everything that's an issue. I think I was watching a clip online about only 10,000 workers are allowed to retire in a month's time or something, because files are stored in like a mine, and it's crazy. And then it's like straight from the 1950s or something like that. And when I was just reading and watching this clip, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like only 10,000 people can retire a month just because of these really old and outdated systems. So finally, someone's like trying to figure this out and trying to fix these problems. And it seems like Elon's doing a really good job. And I saw a few clips too of the Donald Trump and Elon interview with this kid. It was pretty funny. Like Elon was chatting, and then this kid was like, and then like, hey, stop. And then they had to resume. I thought that was pretty jokes as well. That was pretty funny. And then I think one thing really stuck out for me in that speech. He was just saying two things need to be done. It's care and competence. And then that really stood out to me. I was like, wow, is that all it takes for everything to be fixed and stuff? And yeah, like you guys were saying, and I've been saying too, like it seems like more and more things are coming out, and it just seems like this Doge is doing really well for the government of the United States of America. I wish we actually had this in Canada. That'd be really fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of other places, I see comments on like, oh, I wish the UK had this. I wish Australia had this. So overall, I think it's like a really good thing for the United States government. And woo, yeah, keep it up. Go. And on a side note, in terms of the USAID, I think some of the things that they've been doing are quite ridiculous and quite questionable. And I think we can all put two and two together. Elon and his team should probably have more power or authority over this, because it seems like they make the common sense choice over, I don't know, let's see, 1.5 million on Kenyan soap operas to promote HIV and AIDS. Yeah. Although that's very important, you could probably knock down that price. But hey, these are our opinions, so it is what it is.
Yeah. What would Big Balls do is the question.
He would crack his balls down deep. I don't know. Audit the heck out of this.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else want to chime in here?
I think that I have heard a lot of commentary from both sides on the whole Doge factor. And I will say that it does seem that a lot of power has been given to Elon to enact a lot of change. And the people didn't elect Elon, so it does feel like it is a lot of power being handed to a billionaire that a lot of people don't particularly like, who may have voted for Donald Trump but didn't vote for Elon. And yes, I'm aware that Elon was referenced in Donald Trump's campaign. But again, I'm just saying I could see people being displeased about that, given that this is an unelected individual. And on that regard, I think that a lot of the, well, maybe not a lot, but several of the examples given, particularly like the condom one, for example, I feel like in terms of providing aid to a country, that's a pretty bog standard thing in terms of aid wise. People are going to do it, and having them do it with protection so that there is not kids that they can't handle, and that kind of thing. Like, as from a aid perspective, I feel like this is something where to reduce the HIV, etc., that was being spread. Like, I think that that's a more understandable usage of aid, given that the the purpose of aid is to assist another country. Now, again, whether or not you can have an argument about whether or not the U.S. should have been providing aid in the first place, but that's kind of like a different conversation. But from my perspective, like, if they're going to be providing aid, I don't think that for example, the condom one is one where it's like, I don't think that's one where we necessarily need to attack the USAID to the same extent. Some of the pottery classes, etc., I can kind of see why that wouldn't be as useful. But like, yeah. And it's so again, it's like, do you what do you like, from an America first perspective? This is probably good cuts, because any degree of foreign aid is money that is being spent outside of the US, that is being spent the government is sending to another country. If you're of the opinion that America needs to be the priority, then why are we wasting money on wasting, but in their perspective, why, like, especially if you're someone who is having a hard time, you're having a bad time, like, and then you find out the government is sending $50 million in condoms to another country, and you're homeless, or you're living paycheck to paycheck. It's like really hard to go there and be like, I could have used some of that $50 million. So I think from a perspective of like maintaining American hedge money, like, over the other countries, maybe cutting the aid and such will be worse in the long run. But from a benefiting America right now in America, maybe this is something that more people will be getting alongside with. So again, I don't really have all the ins and outs on everything that USAID. I have heard some discussions about how there was medical supplies and stuff that was supposed to be shipped out to other countries that's now just gonna sit and waste because of how quickly they cut stuff. So maybe there's some of that where they might be moving a little bit too quickly to cut stuff without kind of tying up tying the bow at the end, so that things aren't getting wasted. But I mean, if America is the one who is giving the aid to other countries, America also has the right to stop giving aid to other countries. So I don't think that this is something we need to. Well, I don't think that the Americans, and by extension DOGE, are at fault for canceling this to a certain, like, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, he who giveth can also taketh away, right? Like, there's no requirement for the U.S. to give this aid in the first place. So if they want to stop tomorrow, you could be angry, you could be sad, but they did not have to give it in the first place. So maybe, yeah, it's just, that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, I think that if I was an American, I might be more pro the DOGE, because I'd be like, hey, money at home, especially if I wasn't doing as well. Whereas if you're someone who I think is doing relatively well, I can see you being who cares about other countries more. I could see someone being more like, we're stopping all of these aid to these people. $1 sent to a different country is worth like 10 times as much than it is here. If you have your basic needs already met, it's a lot easier to look out and try and help other people. But I think that they're kind of coming in and doing a America needs to be saved, so we're just gonna cut, and again, yeah, from an America's perspective, this is probably going to be beneficial for people within America, but from a global perception and perspective, there will potentially be, more people negatively affected than positively affected. So that's kind of my take on it all.
To start off, the whole like press conference was hilarious. It was just kind of like a massive troll, and just the like Elon's style mixed with Trump is just almost the perfect match. Like, who would have thought? And it's just kind of funny because like the media and the Democrats are operating on continual Trump derangement syndrome since 2016, and they've basically been operating on Elon derangement syndrome since around 2020. So now they've kind of met together, and they're like, there's like a Megazord derangement syndrome or whatever you want to call it, but it's like it's just the perfect storm. And I think it reminds me a lot of like what happened with how the media covered like the Twitter buyout and like all the like embellishment and drama, and I think a lot of the things that the Democrats and media are complaining about are still embellished. Even if I agree with Tristan that there's obviously going to be programs that USAID funds that are good for the world, but like I think a lot of it's wasteful. I think a lot of it's actually problematic too. So there's like, you could talk about this subject matter for hours, but I think that Trump had a strong mandate. I think that the entire cabinet and all the advisors are actually unelected. I do agree they have to go through congressional hearings, but like it is pretty common that like presidents are able to appoint advisors and czars to do things like this. So I don't actually think it's that unprecedented, this program. Like I think it should in theory be bipartisan. So it's actually just disappointing that you can't find any Democrat that has anything to say about what should be cut from government. They just kind of run off of a philosophy that we should reform government by making it bigger. So that's kind of all we're getting from the Democrats. So I just don't think they're really being good faith actors here, even if from time to time people have good points about programs that shouldn't be cut. I still don't really think the Democrats are operating in good faith for the most part. I think it's one of the important angles here is to talk about is that like a lot of like, there is a lot of sensationalism happening here, which, the media tends to be sensationalistic against Trump and Elon, and now they're being sensationalistic and using words like fraud and illegal. I don't necessarily think that most of the things that have been covered here are necessarily fraud in that they're illegal, but they are fraudulent in that most people probably were unaware that governments were funding like dramas about HIV and funding. I mean, everybody kind of knew about the condom programs, but like, there's a lot of like nonsensical things that kind of like, do these things even move the needle? Like, that's the other thing when you're talking about these like small government programs, like, do they move the needle? I don't think that most of them do. I think most of them are pretty silly. There's also like another point that the Democrats like substantially raised U.S. aid under Biden, and like this is also often seen by many people as influence peddling. So I think it's important to like cover that angle. There's a lot of other smarter people on the internet that are covering this subject, so I recommend people look into that. But I mean, I think the important angle that I want to focus on is that it does create a lot of institutional corruption that's like not necessarily illegal, but like things that people who work in things that politicians are able to kind of set up these circular economies for themselves and their family networks. Like a lot of family networks tied to politicians run charities, and some of these charities showed up in these USAID funding programs. So like politicians are able to get their kids and jobs, six-figure jobs. They're able to get money through these programs. And then people always wonder, how do these politicians who make $200,000 a year have $400 million net worths, or maybe $100 million net worths, whatever. This kind of explains a lot of that circular economy happens, because politicians can really like help their family network substantially through these kinds of things. So, and I think the Democrats did get caught doing a lot of it. It is bipartisan. What USAID is being used maliciously by both parties, but it is bipartisan. But the Democrats got caught, and the Democrats decided to like defend it, while the Republicans are being a little bit more like careful about it. So I think that that's kind of an important point of view here. But the other thing I wanted to say is that like a lot of people on the left, and I've been one of these people, I've been this person too, kind of claim that like these small programs don't really move the needle on like budget cuts and that kind of stuff. And like, what's fund cutting $11 million? How's that going to change anything? But these things do add up. It's also important to like that there's been a lot of allegations that USAID is tied to a lot of programs that are actually running out of the Department of Defense, the CIA, and the State Department. This kind of influence peddling where you can use these programs to help opposition that are favored by the United States, or you could use these programs to just intervene in these countries in ways that are often like not liked by those countries. Like there has been a lot of instances where countries have like told Western democracies, Western governments to stay out of their business and stop with the foreign aid. Like India has actually like done their hard, like that's just one example. But Modi like actually worked hard to ban a lot of foreign aid out of India, and they actually had a lot of better social outcomes when the foreign aid actually left their country. So even the well-intentioned stuff can actually cause a lot of damage, and like a $10 million program here and there can cause a lot of damage depending on what country you're talking about. That could be a really big budget for a lot of places. And when you have this giant government of the United States that are able to kind of like push their weight around, that does have a huge impact on the world. So I think that the sloppiness of these programs, but also some of the programs being malicious, are actually like used to help, you know, destabilize governments. And I don't think that should be ignored, because USAID there's been a lot of allegations that USAID engages in that kind of activity, especially the stuff that's very directly related, directly funded by the US government. And I think the last thing is that there is a problem, I would say, like in the Western world, that we've allocated a lot of our human capital towards like nonprofits and government, and we have a hard time hiring people in like, I don't know, like the services industry and the blue collar industry, because we actually have a lot of experts in our society. So I think when you have these giant government budgets constantly funneling money to these things, that actually has a very damaging distortionary effect to our labor economy, where we do have a lot of, I would say, not so useful experts who get paid good salaries. And I think that misallocation of human capital actually has a very negative effect on our home economies too, which is, I would say, a point that goes towards the America First sentiment that came out of this story.
I mean, you took almost all my words out of my mouth already, so I won't add too much on it. But yeah, I guess one thing I will mention, and then we can move on to the next story, is I just want to maybe add to my previous opinion of my disappointment in the Democratic Party. And what I mean by this is that the way that they reacted, I think, Zillennial, you touched upon this as well earlier, the way that they're reacting to DOGE trying to, you know, audit and go after USAID, the way that the Dems are kind of pushing back, it's just so disappointing. And it just kind of underscores the point that I don't think that this is going to be a political party that's going to be taken seriously for a very long time going forward. And if they continue down this path, and I'm saying this as like a former leftist who got, I guess you could say, disillusioned by a lot of the left-leaning, you know, movements in both the US and Canada, or the West in general. I just think that they're on kind of a wrong path, right? So history is not going to remember the Democrats kindly if they continue pushing back against someone who's auditing and trying to catch fraud, waste, and abuse. Because if you ask just regular people, and not like, you know, diehard brainwashed party supporters, and I recognize that there's those types of people on both sides, but talking about the Democrats in particular, if they're trying to present this argument that we shouldn't be going after agencies who waste money and who may have conducted fraudulent activity, that's not a winning position in any society, right? Like, because who is the general, like 95% of people are not going to be for waste, fraud, and abuse. And I just think that the way that the Democrats have been reacting, it can be boiled down to 3 stages, right? So stage 1 is there is no fraud, waste, and abuse, which is we're past that stage now because it's been clearly proven false. There is fraud, there is waste, and there is abuse in these agencies like USAID and other stuff that DOGE has uncovered. Number 2 is, okay, maybe there is some waste, fraud, and abuse, but USAID was also doing some other stuff that were legitimate. So, we should not go after this like waste, fraud, and abuse because the good that they're doing cancels out the bad that they're doing. And also Elon Musk is an a-hole for going after us, for going after causes that we like, and also he's unelected, which again, by the way, like a lot of people are unelected. And by the way, Elon doesn't have the direct authority to do anything. So whatever he does still needs to be approved by either Trump or I think they place USAID under Marco Rubio, who was confirmed by the Senate in a unanimous bipartisan vote. So this whole argument that Elon shouldn't be doing all this because he's unelected, first of all, there's a lot of people who have a lot of power in Western society, in both US, Canada, whatever, Western democracies that are not elected, who have a lot of power already, right? So if you just take the United States, look at the Fed, right? Like the Fed has enormous power, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And yet the Fed chairman is not elected by the people. He's appointed, right? Jay Powell. So again, like I think that they've completely overblown this Elon is unelected kind of argument, and long term it might appeal to some people, but I don't think it's going to appeal to a vast majority of people. So that's a losing position. But we're at stage 2, right, where they're saying like, okay, sure, you've maybe uncovered a lot of this fraud, waste, and abuse, but there's also a lot of good things. So let's not shut down USAID. And then the third stage, which I predict we're not like fully there yet, but we're maybe at like late stage, stage 2, or maybe early stage 3. Stage 3 is, fraud is actually good. Like, right? like if they get desperate enough, that's what I predict that they're gonna go. It's like they go from there is no fraud, waste, and abuse to there might be some, but there's also a lot of good. To number 3, actually fraud, waste, and abuse is good. Like that's just my prediction. I don't know. I'm super biased on this. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments, which I am not going to read.